A routine shattered. James Williams, a distinguished black judge in the city, started his mornings like clockwork. The early hours were sacred to him, a time for solitude and reflection before the chaos of the day would unfurl. As dawn crept slowly into his spacious yet lonely home, the soft buzz of his alarm broke the silence, reminding him that the day awaited his attention. He swung his feet over the edge of the bed, his bare soles meeting the cool hardwood floor. Rubbing his eyes, he took a moment to gather his thoughts, breathing in the stillness that surrounded him. Every day began with the same comforting routine: a refreshing shower to wash away the remnants of sleep, a strong cup of black coffee brewed to perfection, and a walk with Bella, his loyal dog. Bella had been by his side for the past 8 years, ever since his late wife, Monica, had surprised him with the small bundle of fur as an anniversary gift. After Monica's untimely passing, Bella became more than just a pet. She was family, his solace in the darkest hours. The gentle creature with soulful eyes had been a source of unconditional love during sleepless nights filled with grief, and in the moments when the weight of his judicial responsibilities felt overwhelming. As James clipped Bella's leash onto her collar, he noticed the way she eagerly wagged her tail, her excitement infectious. Together, they ventured out into the quiet neighborhood, the cool morning air wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. The streets were still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, creating a serene backdrop for their daily ritual. Each step he took felt like a reminder of life's simple joys, a reprieve from the looming challenges that awaited him in the courtroom. The park nearby was a favored destination for both James and Bella, where they often encountered familiar faces, other dog owners exchanging pleasantries while their pets frolicked. But this morning felt different, charged with an undercurrent of tension James couldn't quite place. Perhaps it was the weight of recent events, a string of high-profile cases, and the ever-present scrutiny of his decisions. As he walked, he couldn't help but reflect on the changes in society, the growing divide, and the responsibility that came with wearing the black robe of justice. Halfway through their walk, they rounded a corner and were met with a sight that made James's heart race. A police cruiser sat parked at the edge of the park, its lights flashing ominously in morning light. James's instincts kicked in. He felt a wave of unease wash over him. He had seen too many instances of tensions between law enforcement and the communities they were sworn to protect, especially among marginalized groups. He tightened his grip on Bella's leash, instinctively pulling her closer as they passed the vehicle. At that moment, a tall figure stepped out of the car. Officer Mark Daniels, a newcomer to the precinct known for his aggressive tactics and a reputation that preceded him. James had heard whispers about Daniels from fellow judges and community leaders, discussions tinged with concern about his heavy-handed approach to policing. As the officer strode towards him, a chill ran down James's spine. "Morning, Judge," Daniels greeted, his tone curt and lacking the warmth that James expected from someone in his position. "Nice dog you've got there." "Thank you," James replied, keeping his voice steady. He could sense the officer's gaze lingering on Bella, an unsettling feeling stirring within him. "Watch out," Daniels warned, a hint of condescension creeping into his voice. "Some dogs aren't as friendly as they look." James felt his pulse quicken. Bella was gentle, never aggressive. She had a heart of gold. He felt an urge to defend her, to assert that she posed no threat. But he chose restraint, understanding that sometimes silence was more powerful than a confrontation. They exchanged a few more words, a polite facade masking the tension in the air, before Officer Daniels returned to his cruiser. Shaking off the encounter, James continued his walk, trying to shake the unease that lingered. Bella, sensing her owner's discomfort, nuzzled against his leg, offering comfort in her own way. They completed their walk in silence, the tranquility of the morning now overshadowed by the encounter with Daniels. Back home, James poured himself another cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen as he stared out the window. The sun was rising higher in the sky, casting a golden hue over the neighborhood. He thought about his responsibilities, the cases lined up for the day, and the decisions that could change lives. But his mind kept drifting back to Officer Daniels and the unsettling feeling that had settled in his chest. He couldn't shake the thought that the police officer was a storm brewing on the horizon, one that would inevitably collide with his life in ways he could not yet foresee. As the day progressed, James delved into his work, but the earlier encounter nagged at him, a distraction that refused to fade. He lost himself in legal briefs and case files, his mind racing with thoughts of justice and the law. The courthouse buzzed with activity, the sounds of attorneys discussing cases and clerks shuffling papers filling the air. James navigated through it all, presenting a composed exterior while internally grappling with the feeling that he needed to be on guard. As the hours passed, a knot tightened in his stomach. That evening, while at home, he found himself pacing the floor, Bella trailing closely behind. He felt a sense of foreboding, an instinctual warning that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. Around midnight, a loud knock jolted him from his thoughts. Bella barked instinctively, her protective nature surfacing. James opened the door to find Officer Daniels standing on his porch, a grim expression etched across his face. "Judge Williams," he said, his voice steady but lacking warmth. "We need to talk." James's heart raced. The sense of dread that had been building all day surged to the forefront. "About what?" he asked cautiously, stepping aside to let the officer in. "It's about your dog," Daniels replied, the gravity of his words hanging heavy in the air. The world around James blurred, his mind racing as he processed the implication of those words. He could feel the tension coiling tighter within him, a dark cloud looming over their conversation. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniels hesitated, clearly weighing his words. "There was an incident earlier today, during a routine patrol in the park. Your dog, Bella, she was involved." James's breath hitched in his throat, panic rising like bile. "What do you mean? Is she okay?" "She was shot, Judge," Daniels said, his tone flat, devoid of empathy. "I thought she was a threat." A roar of disbelief surged through James, followed by an overwhelming wave of anguish. "You shot her?" His voice cracked, tears stinging his eyes. "Why would you do that?" "I was responding to a call," Daniels continued, his voice still devoid of emotion. "There was a report of an aggressive dog. When I arrived, I saw Bella running towards me. I didn't know." James felt his world shatter around him. Bella, his constant companion, the one who had seen him through his darkest hours, was in danger because of a mistake, a tragic misjudgment. As he stood frozen in shock, rage began to boil beneath the surface. The injustice, the recklessness of it all, flooded his mind. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" James shouted, his voice echoing off the walls of his home. "You took a life without even trying to understand." Daniels remained stoic, a mere reflection of the consequences of his actions. "I was just following protocol," he defended weakly, but James could see the uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You don't shoot first and ask questions later," James retorted, the anger spilling over. "You had no right." The room fell silent, tension hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. James felt the walls closing in on him, the injustice of the situation clawing at his heart. Bella was not just a dog. She was his lifeline, a piece of his late wife that still lived on. And now, because of an officer who acted without thought, she was hurt, perhaps even dead. "Where is she?" James demanded, his voice steadier now, but still laced with urgency. "She's at the vet," Daniels replied, his demeanor shifting slightly. "I didn't want to leave her behind. They're trying to stabilize her." James felt a flicker of hope, though it was tempered by the anger still coursing through him. "I need to see her," he insisted, his heart racing. "Let's go," Daniels said reluctantly, and together they left his home, stepping into a night that felt heavier than ever before. As they drove through the dimly lit streets, James's mind whirled with thoughts of Bella and the life they shared. Memories flooded back, her playful barks, the warmth of her fur, and the solace she offered in his darkest moments. He could not lose her. She was all he had left of Monica, the last connection to the love they shared. The weight of despair pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. The vet clinic stood illuminated against the night sky, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. As they entered, the sterile smell of antiseptic overwhelmed him, a stark contrast to the warmth of home. The receptionist greeted them with a somber expression, and James felt his heart sink further. "Where is she?" he asked, urgency evident in his voice. "She's in surgery right now," the receptionist replied, her tone soft but serious. "The vet will come out to speak with you once they have more information." James nodded, anxiety swirling within him as he paced the waiting area. He felt the weight of Officer Daniels' presence nearby, a reminder of the reason they were there. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, but he tried to focus on Bella, willing her to pull through, to fight for her life as she had fought for his companionship through the years. Minutes felt like hours as he waited, each tick of the clock echoing the fears racing through his mind. What if she didn't make it? The thought was unbearable. James closed his eyes, envisioning Bella's bright eyes and wagging tail, a small piece of joy in a world filled with chaos. He couldn't allow that to be taken from him. Finally, the vet emerged, a tired expression on her face. James's heart sank further, the gravity of her demeanor sending chills down his spine. "Judge Williams," she called, and he stepped forward, dread pooling in his stomach. "How is she?" he asked, his voice trembling. "She's stable," the vet began, and James felt a flicker of relief. "But she sustained serious injuries. We had to perform surgery to save her life. She'll need extensive care moving forward." "Can I see her?" James pleaded, his heart aching for his companion. The vet hesitated, glancing at Officer Daniels before nodding. "You can, but she's still under sedation. It may take time for her to recover." James nodded, swallowing hard as he followed the vet to the back. Each step felt heavy, the reality of the situation weighing down on him. They entered a small room, and there lay Bella, bandaged and vulnerable, a shadow of the lively dog he knew. Kneeling beside her, James gently stroked her fur, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, girl," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this." As he sat by her side, the anger towards Officer Daniels simmered beneath the surface, a boiling cauldron of rage and injustice. How could someone so careless wield such power? How could he take a life so easily without understanding the consequences of his actions? In that moment, James realized that he would not let this go. Bella deserved justice, and he would fight for her. The night wore on, and as dawn broke, James found himself standing at a crossroads. He could either accept the situation and move on or take a stand, ensuring that Officer Daniels would face the repercussions of his actions. The decision weighed heavily on him, but deep down, he knew he couldn't turn away. Bella's life mattered. His voice mattered. As he left the clinic, resolve settled within him like a heavy cloak. He would seek justice, not just for Bella, but for all the lives affected by reckless policing. The battle ahead would be daunting, but he was ready. Bella had fought for her life. Now it was his turn to fight for hers. The decision. As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, James Williams stood staring out at the quiet street, his heart heavy with conflicting emotions. The events of the previous night played on a loop in his mind, each memory sharper and more painful than the last. Bella's image, vulnerable and bandaged, haunted him. She was more than just a pet. She was the last thread connecting him to a happier past, a past filled with love and laughter shared with his late wife, Monica. James took a deep breath, grounding himself in the moment. He made his way to the living room, the familiar surroundings offering little comfort. Photographs of Monica adorned the walls, her radiant smile frozen in time, a stark contrast to the sorrow that now filled the space. It was in these memories that James found the courage to confront the reality before him. Officer Mark Daniels needed to be held accountable for his actions, and the only way to ensure that was through justice. The decision weighed heavily on him. On one hand, pursuing a case against the officer felt like an uphill battle, one that could involve public scrutiny and personal pain. The legal system was a complicated labyrinth, often tangled with bureaucracy and bias. Yet on the other hand, to remain silent would mean that Bella's suffering and the reckless actions of a man wielding a badge would go unchecked. James knew deep down that silence was complicity, and he couldn't allow that to happen, not for Bella, not for himself, and not for anyone else who might suffer the same fate. He grabbed his phone and dialed the veterinary clinic, the sound of the ringing phone echoing in the stillness of the house. After a few anxious moments, the receptionist's voice broke through the silence. "Thank you for calling Sunnyvale Veterinary Clinic. How can I help you?" "Hi, this is Judge James Williams. I was just checking on my dog, Bella. How is she doing this morning?" "Good morning, Judge. Bella is stable but still under observation. She's responding well to treatment, but we want to monitor her for the next few hours before making any decisions about her discharge." A wave of relief washed over James, but the weight of the situation remained heavy in his heart. "Thank you for taking care of her," he said, gratitude threading through his voice. "I appreciate everything you're doing. Of course, we're doing our best. We'll keep you updated," the receptionist replied before hanging up. James placed his phone down, a mix of hope and determination coursing through him. He had always prided himself on his integrity, his commitment to justice and fairness. It was this very sense of duty that now propelled him to take action. He would not allow Officer Daniels' reckless behavior to go unchallenged. The thought of other families suffering from similar incidents spurred him on. He needed to gather information, to understand the steps required for a case against the officer. He turned to his laptop, the screen illuminating his determined expression as he searched for resources on police accountability and civil rights. Hours slipped away as he delved into articles, legal precedents, and community resources. The information was overwhelming, but it was also enlightening. James discovered that many communities had suffered from similar injustices, and that change was often born from individual courage. As he clicked through various websites, a small voice in the back of his mind cautioned him. What if you fail? What if you put yourself and Bella through more pain? But he pushed those thoughts aside. The fight for justice was rarely easy, but it was necessary. After several hours, he decided to reach out to a trusted colleague, Angela Lopez, a fellow judge known for her passion for civil rights and community advocacy. He dialed her number, his heart racing with anticipation and anxiety. When she picked up, he wasted no time. "Angela, it's James. I need to talk to you about something serious." "Of course, James. What's going on?" "I'm considering filing a complaint against Officer Daniels," he said, feeling a weight lift off his chest as he voiced his intention. "He shot Bella last night, and I can't just let that go without action." There was a brief silence on the other end before Angela responded, her voice measured. "I'm sorry to hear that, James. Bella is like family. You're right to seek justice, but you need to be prepared for the backlash. The police can be protective of their own, and this might not be an easy battle." "I know," James admitted, his voice steadier now. "But what happened is wrong, and I can't stay silent. Bella didn't deserve this, and neither do others who might face similar situations." Angela sighed, her concern evident. "I understand, but you need to consider the implications. You're a judge. Your position comes with scrutiny. If you decide to move forward, you should do so with careful consideration." James appreciated her honesty, but the fire within him refused to be extinguished. "I need to do this, not just for Bella, but for everyone who's been affected by this kind of violence." "Okay," Angela said, her tone shifting to one of support. "I'll help you gather information and connect you with organizations that specialize in police accountability. We can strategize together, but remember to protect yourself and Bella. It's a dangerous game to play." "Thank you, Angela. I appreciate your help," James said, feeling the renewed sense of purpose. After hanging up, he felt a mixture of adrenaline and fear coursing through his veins. He knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he couldn't let fear dictate his actions. Bella's recovery depended not just on medical intervention, but also on ensuring that her suffering did not go unnoticed or unpunished. With a sense of determination, he pulled out a notebook and began jotting down his thoughts and a plan of action. The first step would be to document everything: dates, times, and details of the incident. He would gather statements from witnesses in the park, ensuring that their voices were heard. Next, he needed to consult with a legal advisor who could guide him through the complexities of filing a formal complaint. James worked tirelessly through the afternoon, fueled by the urgency of his mission. He crafted an outline for his complaint, detailing the events that transpired and the impact it had on his life. Every stroke of the pen was a cathartic release of the emotions that had been pent up inside him. With each sentence, he felt a growing sense of empowerment, like he was reclaiming his voice in a world that often silenced the marginalized. As the evening approached, he took a moment to step outside and clear his mind. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, a breathtaking canvas that reminded him of the beauty that still existed in the world, even amidst chaos. He thought about Bella, the bond they shared, and how important it was for him to fight for her. Returning inside, James prepared dinner, his thoughts still swirling around the actions he needed to take. He couldn't shake the image of Bella lying in that clinic, fighting for her life, and it propelled him forward with unwavering resolve. He decided he would visit her again that night, a gesture of love and support that he hoped would give her the strength to heal. The drive to the veterinary clinic was filled with anticipation and a hint of anxiety. He wondered how Bella was faring, how much progress she had made since their last visit. As he approached the clinic, the familiar neon sign flickered against the darkening sky, guiding him to the sanctuary where Bella was receiving care. When he stepped inside, the comforting smell of antiseptic filled the air. The receptionist greeted him with a warm smile, though it didn't mask the underlying seriousness of the situation. "Good evening, Judge Williams. Bella is still recovering, but she is stable. You can see her now if you'd like." "Thank you," James replied, his heart pounding in his chest. He followed the receptionist down a narrow corridor until they reached a small room. The door opened, revealing a tranquil space where Bella lay resting on a soft bed, connected to monitors that beeped softly, a reminder of her fragility. James knelt beside her, his heart aching at the sight of his beloved dog. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of love and exhaustion. "Hey, girl," he whispered, gently stroking her head. "I'm here. I'm so sorry this happened to you." Bella's tail gave a weak thump against the blanket, a small but powerful signal of her will to fight. Tears brimmed in James's eyes as he leaned closer, resting his forehead against hers. "We're going to get through this, I promise. You're not alone." In that moment, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the quiet intensity of their bond, James made a silent vow to Bella. He would fight for her, not just to save her life, but to ensure that no one else would have to endure such pain and suffering. This was not just about a dog. It was about justice, about a system that needed to change. As he sat there, time seemed to fade away. The world outside fell silent, leaving only the two of them in their small universe of love and resilience. He envisioned the future he would fight for, a future where compassion prevailed over brutality, where every creature was valued and protected. The resolve in his heart strengthened with each passing moment, a fire igniting within him that could not be extinguished. When he finally left the clinic that night, it was with a renewed sense of purpose. He would not shy away from the fight that lay ahead. With Bella's spirit guiding him, he was ready to take on the world, one step at a time, to ensure that justice was served, not just for her, but for everyone who had suffered at the hands of those meant to protect them. As the darkness enveloped him, James felt a sense of clarity. He would be a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope for the oppressed, and he would not rest until the truth was revealed. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but he was prepared to face them all. For Bella and for the future they both deserved. Gathering allies. In the days that followed, the weight of his decision settled into James's routine like an unshakable shadow. Each morning began with the same ritual. Waking early to the sound of his alarm, sipping strong black coffee, and taking Bella for her walk, now a mere shadow of its former self, as he navigated the quiet streets alone. Though Bella was still recovering at the clinic, her absence lingered heavily in the air, a reminder of the void left by the traumatic event that had altered the course of his life. James's determination to seek justice for Bella only grew stronger, the anger at Officer Daniels' actions fueling his resolve. He was determined to gather the necessary information and allies to support his cause. It was essential to ensure that his voice wasn't the only one, as systemic issues often thrived in silence. He began to think about how to transform his pain into a movement, a voice for the voiceless. One evening, he invited a few friends over for dinner, hoping to share his story and seek their counsel. As they gathered in his cozy living room, laughter and conversation filled the air, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside him. He had known these friends for years. They were a diverse group of individuals with different backgrounds, and he valued their perspectives. As the conversation flowed, he could feel the weight of his secret pressing down on him, but he knew he had to share what was on his heart. "Can I ask for your support with something important?" James began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The chatter gradually hushed, and his friends turned their attention to him, their expressions shifting to one of concern. "What's going on, James?" Angela asked, her brow furrowing. James took a deep breath, the moment of vulnerability settling over him. "It's about Bella. She was shot by a police officer, and I'm planning to file a complaint against him." The room fell silent, the gravity of his words hanging heavily in the air. He watched as his friends exchanged worried glances, the weight of the situation settling over them. "Are you serious?" said Mark, a fellow attorney known for his sharp wit and keen insights. "That's a big step. Do you have any evidence? Witnesses?" James nodded, determined. "I'm gathering statements from people who were in the park that morning. I've also started documenting everything that happened. I want to make sure this doesn't just get brushed under the rug." Angela leaned forward, her expression supportive. "You're right to do this, James. It's important, not just for Bella but for accountability within the police force. You need to shine a light on this." Another friend, Leah, who worked in community activism, chimed in. "I've seen too many stories like this go unheard. You have a platform, James, and your voice can resonate. If you mobilize the community, it could make a real impact." James felt a surge of hope at their words, a flicker of solidarity that warmed his heart. "I'd like to organize a community meeting," he said. "We can invite others who have experienced similar injustices. Maybe we can form a coalition, people who are willing to stand up and advocate for change." "That's a great idea," Mark agreed. "But remember, not everyone will support you, especially within the police department. You might face backlash." "I'm prepared for that," James replied, his determination hardening. "This isn't just about Bella anymore. It's about a systemic issue that affects so many." After dinner, the conversation shifted to strategy. They brainstormed ideas on how to raise awareness and mobilize support. James felt the energy in the room grow as they tossed around potential locations for the meeting, how to use social media effectively, and whom to invite. It was exhilarating to feel that he was no longer alone in this fight. As the evening wore on, the group discussed the logistics of reaching out to local advocacy organizations, including those dedicated to animal rights and police accountability. James took copious notes, his mind racing with possibilities. He had always been a fighter in the courtroom, but now he was stepping into a new arena, one where the stakes were even higher. After the meeting concluded, James felt a renewed sense of purpose and camaraderie. He spent the following days solidifying his plans, reaching out to contacts in the community, and posting on social media to gather interest for the upcoming meeting. The more people he connected with, the more he realized how widespread the issue of police violence was. He was determined to ensure that Bella's story was not just an isolated incident, but a rallying cry for change. As the community began to respond to his outreach, messages of support flooded in, filling his inbox with encouragement and stories from others who had faced similar struggles. It was eye-opening to realize how many people had been touched by systemic failures, and the growing momentum behind him made his resolve even stronger. Finally, the day of the community meeting arrived. The venue was a local community center, a welcoming space that felt imbued with hope. James arrived early, his heart racing with anticipation and nerves. He had printed flyers detailing the purpose of the meeting, ensuring they highlighted the importance of accountability, justice for Bella, and the need for broader systemic change. As people began to filter in, he felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Would they resonate with his message? Would they see the importance of fighting against the injustices that had impacted their lives? He took a moment to center himself, reminding himself of why he was there. Once the room was filled, James stood at the front, looking out at a diverse audience of faces that mirrored the community he loved. Some were familiar friends, while others were strangers with shared experiences. He cleared his throat, the moment arriving when he would share his story. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady. "I'm James Williams, and I stand before you today not just as a judge, but as a man whose heart has been broken by the actions of one individual. Recently, my beloved dog, Bella, was shot by a police officer during what was supposed to be a routine morning walk." The room grew silent, every eye focused on him as he continued, recounting the events leading up to that fateful day. He spoke about his bond with Bella, how she had been his lifeline after losing Monica, and how her injury had opened his eyes to the pervasive issues within the justice system. "I can't let this go unchallenged," he said, the passion in his voice rising. "Bella deserves justice, and so do many others who have faced violence or abuse at the hands of those sworn to protect us. This isn't just about me or Bella. It's about holding the system accountable and demanding change." As he spoke, he saw nods of understanding and empathy ripple through the audience. The raw honesty of his words seemed to resonate, and he felt a growing connection with those around him. This was not just a meeting. It was a movement beginning to take shape. After sharing his story, he opened the floor for others to share their experiences. One by one, people stepped forward, recounting their own encounters with police violence, discrimination, and the heartbreak of losing loved ones due to systemic injustices. Each story was a testament to the pain and resilience of the community. James listened intently, each voice adding depth to the tapestry of shared struggles. He felt the collective anger and frustration building, a force that could no longer be ignored. As the meeting progressed, they discussed possible actions they could take, organizing peaceful protests, creating a petition for policy changes, and reaching out to local media to amplify their voices. The atmosphere in the room shifted from sorrow to determination. Together, they forged a commitment to stand united, each individual vowing to do their part to demand change. James felt a surge of hope, the collective energy igniting a fire within him. As the meeting drew to a close, he looked around the room, overwhelmed with gratitude for the support and solidarity that surrounded him. They had begun to build a community, a network of advocates who would not allow their voices to be silenced. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said, emotion thick in his voice. "This is just the beginning. We're in this together, and together we will create change." After the meeting, James lingered for a moment, chatting with individuals who had approached him to share their thoughts. Leah, who had been instrumental in organizing the meeting, smiled as she joined him. "You did an incredible job, James. The energy in this room was amazing." "Thank you, Leah," he replied, a smile breaking through his earlier tension. It feels good to know that we're not alone in this fight." As they continued to converse, James felt a renewed sense of purpose coursing through him. They exchanged ideas for their next steps and discussed how to keep the momentum going. He felt invigorated by the connection they had forged and the strength they could harness together. When he finally left the community center that night, he looked up at the starry sky. A sense of peace settling over him. This was not just about Bella. It was about something much bigger. It was about the right to live without fear, the right to be treated with dignity, and the right to speak out against injustice. James understood that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he also knew that he was no longer walking it alone. With the support of the community and the determination to seek justice, he felt ready to face whatever came next. They would work together to ensure that no one else would have to endure the pain he and Bella had experienced, and they would fight to ensure that justice was served, not just for them, but for all those who had suffered in silence. The first steps of resistance. The following weeks unfolded like a tightly woven tapestry, each thread representing a story of struggle, resilience, and the collective fight for justice. As James Williams settled into this new role as a community advocate, he found that every day brought fresh challenges and unexpected allies. The movement he had ignited in the community was blossoming, fueled by shared experiences and a mutual desire for change. The first task was to create a cohesive plan for action. Drawing on the energy and momentum from the community meeting, James scheduled regular gatherings, transforming the once quiet community center into a hub of activism. Each meeting began with sharing stories of loss, of anger, of hope, before transitioning into discussions on strategy. With each gathering, their network grew, welcoming more voices eager to contribute to the cause. One evening, as he prepared for another meeting, James reflected on the progress they had made. He had spent countless hours compiling testimonies from individuals affected by police violence, including those who had lost loved ones and others who had been harassed or mistreated. The stories were heart-wrenching yet powerful, underscoring the urgent need for reform. James set up a dedicated space within the community center to showcase these stories, an interactive wall where community members could post photographs, notes, and messages about their experiences. The wall quickly became a poignant reminder of the collective pain and resilience within the community. It stood as a visual testament to their fight for justice, and each new addition strengthened their resolve. One night, as the meeting commenced, James stood before a crowd that had swelled beyond his expectations. "Thank you all for coming," he began, feeling the weight of their shared purpose. "Tonight, we're not just sharing our stories. We're going to strategize on how to make our voices heard in a way that demands attention." As the evening progressed, a sense of urgency filled the room. Together, they discussed potential avenues for outreach, including writing letters to local newspapers, engaging with social media influencers, and even planning a peaceful protest. James emphasized the importance of peaceful demonstrations, stressing that their goal was to raise awareness, not incite further conflict. "Every letter we write, every social media post, and every peaceful protest is a step towards change," he asserted, looking around the room to gauge their reactions. "We need to demonstrate that our community will not be silenced. This isn't just about Bella anymore. It's about everyone who has suffered under a system that too often overlooks our humanity." As the meeting wrapped up, individuals began to form smaller groups, eager to take on specific tasks. Some decided to create a social media campaign, while others volunteered to reach out to local press outlets to share their stories. The energy in the room was palpable. They were not just talking about change. They were actively creating it. The next few weeks saw the emergence of a grassroots movement. Flyers adorned the community center, detailing the upcoming events and encouraging more residents to join their cause. James took to social media, sharing updates and calling for support, his posts resonating with the public and amplifying their message. News of the movement spread like wildfire, and soon, local organizations began reaching out to offer their support. Animal rights groups expressed their solidarity, sharing Bella's story and advocating for animal welfare in conjunction with police accountability. Civil rights organizations recognized the fight as part of a larger struggle against systemic injustices, offering resources, expertise, and legal counsel. Among the supporters was a passionate attorney named Carla Reyes, who had dedicated her career to fighting for civil rights. She contacted James, eager to lend her expertise to their cause. "I've seen how powerful collective action can be," she told him during their first meeting. "Let's strategize on how we can hold Officer Daniels accountable and push for policy changes that prevent these incidents from happening in the future." With Carla's guidance, James and the group developed a detailed plan. They drafted a petition aimed at the local government, calling for enhanced training for police officers in de-escalation tactics, the establishment of a community review board, and stricter penalties for officers who misuse their power. The petition outlined clear demands, supported by statistics and testimonies from the community. They set a goal of gathering 1,000 signatures in a month. James felt a renewed sense of purpose as he watched the community rally around this initiative. The interactive wall, now adorned with colorful signatures, served as a visual testament to their determination. Each name represented a person willing to stand up for change, and James felt the weight of responsibility to ensure that their voices were not silenced. One Saturday, they organized a signature gathering event at the local farmers market. The vibrant atmosphere was filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of fresh produce. James, along with several other volunteers, set up a booth adorned with banners displaying Bella's picture and the words "Justice for Bella" in bold letters. As shoppers strolled by, curiosity piqued. James approached passersby with enthusiasm, sharing Bella's story and the goals of their movement. "We're advocating for police accountability and animal welfare," he explained, his passion infectious. "We want to ensure that incidents like this don't happen again. Would you be willing to sign our petition?" To his delight, many people stopped to listen, their expressions shifting from curiosity to outrage as they heard about Bella's situation. Some immediately signed the petition, while others offered words of encouragement. James felt a swell of hope with every signature he collected, realizing that they were tapping into a deeper yearning for change within the community. As the day progressed, the booth buzzed with energy. Children played nearby, families engaged in conversations, and the vibrant community spirit enveloped them all. The number of signatures grew steadily, surpassing their initial goal within just a few hours. James felt a sense of camaraderie as strangers came together for a common cause, their voices uniting in solidarity. Later that evening, as they counted the signatures, James and his team erupted in cheers. "We did it!" one volunteer exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. Over 1,000 signatures. James felt a wave of pride wash over him. "This is just the beginning," he said, heart swelling with gratitude for everyone who had come together. "Now we need to present this to the local government and make our voices heard." In the following weeks, they arranged meetings with local officials, determined to present their petition and demand accountability. Each meeting brought a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Would they listen? Would they take their demands seriously? James knew they had to remain steadfast, no matter the response. Finally, the day of the official presentation arrived. They gathered outside the city hall, their spirits high as they prepared to deliver the petition. Banners were unfurled, and cameras were set up, capturing the moment for social media. The sense of purpose within the group was electric. This was their chance to speak directly to those in power. As they entered the building, the weight of the petition felt tangible in James's hands. It represented more than just signatures. It was a collective plea for justice. He led the group into the conference room, where local officials awaited their arrival. "Thank you for meeting with us today," James began, looking around at the gathered officials. "We're here to present a petition signed by over 1,000 community members, demanding accountability and change in the wake of Officer Daniels' actions." He laid the petition on the table, and as he continued speaking, he recounted Bella's story, highlighting the emotional toll it had taken on him and the community. He articulated their demands clearly, urging the officials to take immediate action to implement changes within the police department. As he spoke, he saw nods of acknowledgement from some officials, while others maintained stern expressions. The atmosphere was charged, a palpable mix of tension and determination filling the room. After he finished, the officials took turns responding. While some expressed sympathy for Bella's plight, others deflected responsibility, suggesting that procedural reviews were necessary before any changes could be made. The disappointment washed over James, but he refused to be deterred. He had anticipated pushback, and he was prepared to fight through it. After the meeting concluded, he rallied the group outside City Hall, their spirits still high despite the bureaucratic barriers they faced. "This isn't over," he declared, his voice steady. "We've made our voices heard, and we will continue to push for change. Our fight is just beginning." Over the following weeks, the movement gained momentum. Local media picked up the story, shedding light on the petition and the injustices faced by community members. Articles and news segments highlighted their cause, amplifying their message far beyond the confines of their neighborhood. James felt a growing sense of hope as the community rallied around the movement. People who had been silent about their own experiences were now coming forward, emboldened by the collective voice that had emerged. He received messages of support from around the city, each one affirming that they were not alone in their fight. But amid the excitement, there were moments of frustration. The local police department issued statements denying any wrongdoing, framing the incident as an unfortunate accident rather than a failure in training or policy. The narratives being spun in the media sometimes felt like a battle against a well-oiled machine, and James knew that dismantling those narratives would require persistence and courage. One evening, while he prepared for another community meeting, a message popped up on his phone. It was from Carla, the attorney who had offered her assistance. "James, I'd like to discuss the possibility of filing a formal complaint against Officer Daniels. We need to make sure we have a strong case to hold him accountable for his actions." James's heart raced at the prospect. This was the next crucial step, one that could potentially lead to real consequences for the officer involved. He replied quickly, eager to move forward. "Yes, let's meet tomorrow. I want to ensure we have everything we need to make this happen." The next day, they met at a local cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air as they settled into a corner booth. Carla pulled out a folder filled with documents, police reports, witness statements, and articles about similar incidents. "We need to create a compelling narrative," she said, her tone serious. "We must show that Officer Daniels' actions were not only reckless, but also indicative of a larger problem within the department." James nodded, his determination solidifying as they brainstormed strategies. They would collect more testimonies, engage with local activists, and ensure their case was as robust as possible. Every detail mattered, and they would not shy away from the challenges ahead. As the days turned into weeks, they tirelessly worked on building the case. James coordinated with community members to gather additional evidence, while Carla crafted legal documents that would lay the groundwork for their complaint. They knew the stakes were high, but their resolve never wavered. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they were ready to file the formal complaint. The day arrived, and as James stood in front of the police department, he felt a mixture of apprehension and empowerment. He held the carefully prepared documents in his hands, feeling the weight of responsibility to everyone who had entrusted him with their stories. As they entered the building, a sense of purpose enveloped him. This was the culmination of their efforts, a moment that symbolized their fight against injustice. James approached the front desk, where an officer greeted them with a disinterested expression. "Can I help you?" the officer asked, barely looking up. James cleared his throat. "We're here to file a formal complaint against Officer Mark Daniels regarding the shooting of my dog Bella." The officer's demeanor shifted slightly, and he nodded as he took the documents from James's hands. "I'll make sure this gets to the right department," he said, though his tone lacked sincerity. James watched as the officer moved behind the desk, but he felt a swell of determination rising within him. They had taken a crucial step forward, and this was just the beginning. With every action they took, they were dismantling the silence that had allowed injustices to persist for far too long. As they left the police department, Carla turned to James, a smile breaking through her earlier seriousness. "This is a significant moment. You've done an incredible job rallying the community and taking action." "Thank you, Carla," James replied, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "I never imagined this would grow into something so powerful, but we can't stop now. We need to keep pushing for change." With their complaint filed, James and his allies prepared for the next phase of their movement. They organized a public demonstration to bring awareness to the issue, inviting community members to join them in standing against police violence and advocating for reforms. The event was scheduled for the following month, a date marked on every calendar in the community. As the day of the demonstration approached, the excitement in the air was palpable. Flyers and posters decorated the neighborhood, announcing the event and encouraging participation. James felt a surge of hope as he witnessed the community come together, each person adding their unique voice to the chorus of change. On the day of the demonstration, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the gathered crowd. People of all ages held signs with messages of solidarity, demanding justice for Bella and accountability for the officer responsible. The energy was electric, a collective heartbeat pulsing with determination and resilience. James took to the stage, looking out at the sea of faces. Friends, family, and strangers united in purpose. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice ringing clear. "Today, we stand together to demand change, to demand justice, and to honor the lives that have been lost or shattered by violence and neglect. This isn't just about Bella. It's about every life that has been impacted by the system's failures." As he spoke, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. The power of their collective voice echoed through the streets, a resonating reminder that they would not be silenced. The demonstration continued with speakers sharing their stories, songs of resistance filling the air, and chants that rang out with passion and conviction. James felt a profound sense of connection to everyone present. This was not just a fight for Bella. It was a fight for dignity, for justice, and for the future they all envisioned. A future where no one had to fear those sworn to protect them. As the day came to a close, James stood amidst the crowd, watching the unity around him. The energy was infectious, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had begun to create a movement, a force that would not be ignored. Together, they would continue to fight for justice, ensuring that Bella's story became a catalyst for change. As the sun set on that powerful day, James knew deep down that this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, filled with challenges and obstacles, but they would face it together. With Bella's spirit guiding him and the community rallying behind him, he felt ready to take on whatever lay ahead. Change was not just a dream. It was a reality they were building together, step by step, voice by voice. The tides of change. The weeks following the demonstration transformed the energy in the community, invigorating those who had gathered to demand justice. James Williams watched as a wave of activism surged, drawing in people from all walks of life, united by a shared vision for a more just society. The success of the rally had brought newfound media attention, allowing their message to spread far beyond the confines of their neighborhood. As James walked through the bustling streets, he was greeted by neighbors and community members who recognized him, offering smiles and words of encouragement. It was a stark contrast to the solitude he had felt in the weeks following Bella's shooting. His connection to the community had deepened, evolving from a sense of responsibility to a network of friendships and support. In the aftermath of the rally, James found himself increasingly engaged in discussions with local leaders and activists, forging alliances that would strengthen their movement. He attended town hall meetings where citizens voiced their concerns about police accountability, community safety, and the need for systemic change. Each meeting felt like a building block, laying the foundation for a movement that was steadily gaining traction. One evening, while sipping coffee at his favorite cafe, he met with Carla Reyes to discuss their next steps. The cafe was abuzz with the chatter of locals, the warm ambience a comforting backdrop for their serious conversation. "We need to think strategically about how to maintain the momentum," Carla said, her brow furrowed in thought. "We've garnered attention, but we must channel that energy into actionable changes." James nodded, appreciating her insight. "I agree. I think we should organize a series of workshops on community safety and police accountability. We can educate residents about their rights and how to report incidents of misconduct. Knowledge is power." "That's a great idea," Carla replied, enthusiasm lighting her eyes. "We can also bring in guest speakers, experts on civil rights and police reform, to share their experiences and insights." As they brainstormed, James felt the gears of change turning. With each plan they formulated, the vision of a safer, more accountable community came into sharper focus. They sketched out a calendar for the upcoming workshops, determining dates, topics, and potential speakers. The excitement in the air was palpable, a promise of transformation. The following weeks were filled with preparation. Flyers promoting the workshops adorned community centers, local businesses, and social media platforms, drawing interest from a broad spectrum of residents. James felt a renewed sense of purpose as he collaborated with community leaders to finalize the logistics. On the night of the first workshop, the community center buzzed with anticipation. James stood at the front of the room, watching as neighbors and friends filled the chairs, eager to learn and engage. The diverse crowd represented a microcosm of the community, young and old, families and singles, all united by a common purpose. "Welcome, everyone," James began, his heart swelling with pride. "Thank you for being here tonight. We're starting a journey towards understanding our rights and advocating for accountability within our police force. This is about creating a safer community for all of us." As the workshop progressed, experts shared valuable insights into police procedures, community rights, and de-escalation techniques. The atmosphere was electric, filled with questions and discussions as participants absorbed the information presented. The collective energy was inspiring. The community was coming alive with knowledge and determination. James facilitated discussions, encouraging participants to share their experiences and concerns. Each story added depth to the workshop, a reminder of the shared struggles that had brought them together. The room was filled with empathy, and with every shared experience, the community grew closer, forging bonds that would strengthen their resolve. After the first workshop concluded, participants lingered, eager to discuss what they had learned. James moved through the crowd, engaging with individuals and listening to their thoughts. He could sense a shift, a growing awareness of the issues at hand, and a desire to take action. As the weeks turned into months, the workshops continued, each one building on the last. Topics ranged from understanding legal rights during police encounters to strategies for advocating for systemic reforms. The participation grew with each session, drawing in individuals who were ready to become advocates for change. James felt a profound sense of fulfillment as he witnessed the transformation within the community. People who had once felt voiceless began to emerge as leaders, sharing their stories and perspectives with courage and conviction. The movement was no longer just his. It belonged to everyone who had felt the sting of injustice. Amid the workshops and community engagement, James continued to follow up on the complaint they had filed against Officer Daniels. He reached out to local officials, demanding updates and accountability. The response was often frustratingly slow, but he refused to be deterred. He understood that real change took time, and he was committed to seeing it through. During one of his follow-up calls, he received disheartening news. Judge Williams, the official on the line, said, "The investigation into Officer Daniels' actions is still ongoing. There's no definitive timeline for when we will have findings or recommendations." James felt a wave of frustration wash over him. But we can't afford to delay this. Officer Daniels needs to be held accountable, and we need to ensure that policies are changed to prevent future incidents." "I understand your concerns," the official replied, but the tone suggested a reluctance to act swiftly. "We have protocols to follow. Rest assured, the department is taking this seriously." His disappointment was palpable, but James steeled himself. He knew that the path to accountability would not be straightforward, and he would need to continue pushing for transparency and justice. The urgency of the matter was too great. He could not let up. In the days that followed, he rallied community members to join him in a series of meetings with local leaders. Together, they prepared a list of demands that included not only accountability for Officer Daniels, but also a call for comprehensive reforms within the police department. They wanted to ensure that officers received proper training on handling animals and de-escalation techniques, addressing the root causes of such incidents. As they gathered for one of these meetings, James looked around the room, filled with familiar faces, friends, neighbors, and advocates who had become an integral part of this journey. "This is our moment," he said, addressing the group. "We have the opportunity to not only seek justice for Bella, but also to create a safer community for all of us." Their discussions were passionate and spirited, each participant contributing ideas and strategies. They debated the best ways to present their demands, considering how to engage the broader community and local media. The energy in the room was palpable, each person committed to the cause. As they finalized their plans, James felt a growing sense of hope. They were no longer just a group of individuals reacting to an injustice. They were a unified movement, standing firm against a system that had long overlooked their voices. The next step was to host a town hall meeting, inviting community members and local officials to engage in an open dialogue about police accountability and reforms. James felt the weight of responsibility, but also a profound sense of purpose. This was their chance to put their demands directly in front of those in power. On the night of the town hall meeting, the community center was filled to capacity. People stood shoulder to shoulder, eager to be part of the conversation. James looked out at the crowd, feeling a swell of pride at the collective determination they had built. This was more than a meeting, it was a movement. As he took the stage, James felt a mix of nerves and excitement. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady. "We are here to discuss important issues that affect our community and to hold our leaders accountable. Together, we will demand change." The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as community members shared their experiences, echoing the pain and frustration that had fueled their activism. The conversations were raw and emotional, touching on everything from police misconduct to the need for transparency in investigations. After the community members spoke, local officials took their turn at the podium. The responses varied. Some expressed sympathy, while others seemed defensive. The tension in the room was palpable as the community pressed for answers, demanding specific commitments from their leaders. As the evening progressed, James saw firsthand the power of collective action. The crowd became a unified force, amplifying their voices in a way that was impossible to ignore. The officials could no longer dismiss their concerns. They were faced with a community unwilling to be silenced. When the meeting concluded, James felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had come together to advocate for change, and he was filled with hope that their voices would be heard. But the journey was far from over. The following days were filled with follow-ups, discussions, and more community engagement. The pressure was mounting on local officials to respond to the demands outlined during the town hall. James and his allies worked diligently to keep the momentum alive, ensuring that the community remained engaged and informed. As the weeks rolled on, they began to see the fruits of their labor. Local media outlets continued to cover the story, highlighting the community's fight for justice and accountability. With each article, their message spread further, reaching new audiences and drawing in additional support. One afternoon, as James sat in his office reviewing documents, he received a call from Carla. "James, I have some exciting news," she said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. We've just received confirmation that the local police department will hold a public forum to discuss the policies surrounding animal encounters and the use of force. They want to address our concerns directly. James's heart raced at the news. That's incredible. This is our chance to push for real change. Exactly. We need to prepare a strong presentation, Carla continued. This forum could set the tone for future interactions between the police and the community. Over the next few days, James and Carla worked tirelessly to prepare for the forum. They compiled data, crafted powerful statements, and rehearsed